Public hearings are none, and then
The third, May 3rd.
May 3rd is a meeting before the public hearing. We're gonna look at the document. Then that document will be posted, the public will speak. And I think the initial plan was to vote right after the public spoke. And the question is whether you want to do that or you want to deliver, you want to listen, try to think about it. But we didn't have a lot of public testimony. And that's the other side of the coin. That's what you won't have to do. We don't have a lot of flexibility time-wise, that's the only thing. Yeah,
Okay.
Good one.
Okay, city notice, 2023 New Haven Charter Revision Commission will convene following dates and times. Board of Alders, Chamber 155 Church Street, New Haven, Connecticut, to work the commission as follows. April 8th, 6 p.m., workshop on the charter. Items include but not limited to elected officials, residency requirements, department heads, minimum qualification to assistant corporation counsel, lifetime appointments to parks and commissions. Board of Alders approving the memorandum of understanding. April 25th, 6 p.m., deliberation and recommendations of the commission. May 3rd, 6 p.m., deliberations and recommendations of the commission. May 9th, final deliberations and public hearing, recommendations of the commission per order. Michael Smart, test. Honorable Michael Smart, City County Clerk, disability related accommodations, 946-7651. Voice for 946-8582 TTY. Public comment testimony and request to testify to be submitted via email. Public testimony at newhavenct.gov before 2 p.m. the day of the meeting. These meetings may be viewed on New Haven Board of Alders YouTube page. For ongoing COVID-19 protocols, wearing masks is required at the meeting. And I will start to my left, introducing commission.
Good evening, everybody. Serena Neal San Giorgio.
Richard Furlow.
Michael Smart.
Ann Schwartz.
Sal DiCola.
And Steve Metnick.
Okay, and then the public, we'd like to acknowledge our two alders, Alder Rodriguez, Alder Hampton Singh. We have Sean Madison from the Chief of Staff, and we have Michelle Dupree. Welcome. Mr. Lucas. Okay, so Attorney Metnick, we're going to turn this over to you.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
It's good to be
always
seeing
to see you. Good to see a legend.
A legend. in his own mind, at least, yeah. And don't worry, Metnick will tell you that he is, right? There's an old Don Rickles joke repeating here today. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to appear before you, as always, and more important, the rest of you on this commission. So it's great to be here. So I'm just going to kind of walk through the items that are before us this evening. We're coming to the end of the review of the significant items that we have, and the first one is Board of Aldermen item number 4, and this is dealing with the 4-year term. What I've tried to point out here, I had a great conversation with Commissioner Schwartz today, and she actually saw the reality of what we have in the state of Connecticut. And what we have found in Connecticut is where there are 4-year terms for both the mayor and the legislative body, they tend to have elections in the same year. Where you have the stagger that some people talk about, it's not really a stagger, is when you retain a 2-year term for members of the legislative body. They obviously are running every 2 years, and so there's one cycle they run with the mayor, one cycle they do not run with the mayor. I won't get into the merits of the arguments, but that's fundamentally what this chart will show you, is that in the larger cities of Stamford and Hartford both have 4-year terms. Bridgeport has a 4-year term for mayor, 2 years for their legislative body. Same is true in Waterbury, 4 and 2. A lot of the other cities, Norwalk, Danbury, Britain, have 2 and 2. Hamden will be going to a 4-year term. In 2025, they have one last cycle of 2-year terms for the mayor. They're going to retain a 2-year term for the legislative council. and mainly 2-year terms again in Bristol, West Haven, Milford, Stratford has a 4-year term for mayor, 2-year term for the remainder of the members, and East Hartford 2 and 2, Middletown 4 and 4. So it's all over the place. I gave you some of the arguments as to why it works and how it would work best and what are the different dynamics. But that's the data. So I don't know if there are any questions. We have to answer them.
Questions from the commission? Cole? No. Okay. And before you move forward, another legend is coming in the room. Commissioner Keys, how are you, sir?
You need a quorum or you happy
No,
to see
wait.
We're happy to see you.
He's one of the great probate judges. He'll tell you that as well.
Twilight of a mediocre career.
That's the joke of the night, Judge.
I didn't think it was a joke, Steve.
Oh, sorry. So the next issue, thank you very much, is the Park Commission lifetime membership. So there's been a question raised by some folks about whether or not the 3 lifetime commissioners should remain lifetime commissioners on infinitum. The way this commission is structured right now, you have 3 permanent or citizen commissioners of the East Rock Park Commission. And I have to tell you, after doing some review, I'm not sure there is any such thing as the East Rock Park Commission any longer. It might have been an entity that existed at the time all the parks merged, and this committee of permanent citizen members came into view, came into into being. And so the reality is, if you take a look around the state, there are some towns that don't have parks commissions. Other towns do have parks commissions, park and recreation commissions, advisory commissions, all sorts of entities, but none of them have permanent members. We're the only entity with permanent members. My thought on it is this: you really cannot end the term of people. You can't take a person's 4-year term and turn it into a 2-year term. You can have them go through their 4-year term while they're seated, and then the next election cycle could change the term into a 2-year term, but you can't change it while they're seated. So those 3 permanent members are permanent members. The only way to get rid of permanent members is to eliminate the commission. And if you eliminated the commission and then replaced it a year or 2 later, they might have an argument, whoa, was that a circumvention, what we were trying to do? Whether they prevail or not, you'd have trouble, it would cause issues. So my thought is, if you're inclined to eliminate the permanent positions, that the preferred course would be just let the terms run out. And what you would have to do as the terms run out, because you have staggered on this commission, is the Board of Alders would have to be vigilant. The mayor and the Board of Alders would have to take a look. Terms over, person's leaving, person died, they left the jurisdiction, and the Board of Alders would then have to pass an ordinance to create the transition of that seat into the stagger. It might naturally flow into a 3-year term that would start at the time that the person left. But more than likely, you probably have to create an interim term, an interim step to get them to the 3-year term to begin the stagger with the rest of the members. So my thought is, if you want to do it, that's the way you have to do it.
Good evening, Councilor. I'm wondering why we even have this in our charter. Why don't we do this by ordinance?
Well, Mr. Majority Leader, I have been a strong advocate for a number of years of thinning down charters quite a bit and moving all sorts of boards and commissions out of the charter into the code of ordinances. In Middletown, I did that very successfully. There are very few boards and commissions in their charter. Camden has a fair number, but we brought it down a little bit. And so I would think it obviously was not an issue with this charter revision, because I think it would take a lot of time to really think about how to do it. But because there are some boards or commissions that you want to make sure are constitutionalized. You want to make sure your board of ethics is constitutionalized. You don't want to be able to eliminate a board of ethics in the community. You may feel the same with the Civil Service Commission, those types of entities. Maybe a police commission, maybe not. Maybe you want to have a police commission in the code of ordinance as opposed to the charter, because you have greater flexibility to meet some of the demands pertaining to police reform in the state of Connecticut, if you moved it in that direction. So I'm a strong advocate for moving boards and commissions out, but I think you need to be careful about moving one out right now, is my only cautionary advice on that. If that's a means of eliminating the permanent positions, I'd be careful. If you were moving them all out, the commission still exists. It would just exist in a different entity, a different form. So I think that the only way to deal with the permanent members right now is to allow a phase out. Basically say, when their positions are vacant, the mayor will propose a member, the Board of Alders will approve it, but in the interim, the Board of Alders will have to work on the transitional information that would be necessary to get them back into the stagger. There's one other point I want to make with regard to this. That is, oh yeah, this is if you look at it, this is one of those commissions that has a requirement for bipartisan aldermanic representation. So if we move in the direction of allowing for all one-party appointments by the Board of Alders, we'll have to address that in this section as well. And the other thing I'd be curious about is who's been appointing these people? If the East Rock Park Commission doesn't exist, who makes the appointment? Is it the probate court? I mean, who? Is there some legacy? Internal where? Internal?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the remaining members, like the people, okay. Well, that's not what the charter says.
I know. but-
Correct.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Thank you, Serena.
I think there's a number of commissions and boards that we should look at removing from the charter and having them established by ordinance. I don't think, eventually the full board has to vote on this, right? I don't think there'll be much resistance if we were to propose that, as you suggested, Counselor, that the permanent members or the lifelong members stay until their term expires. And I don't think that would be difficult to write into the ordinance. Maybe, or that'd be kind of weird, wouldn't it? But anyway,
Yeah, you can do that. I mean, you're changing the kind of corporate foundations of the body, but I think that this is probably rooted in a special act. I don't think there's any doubt that this is rooted in a special act. I don't think this is something that would have been done otherwise. And there had to be some kind of legacy. There had to be some kind of I'm sure that there had to be something that was connected to inheritances and wills.
Peggy Bombera said though, it was when the East Rock Park, which was a separate corporation, merged with the Parks Department. And that's when she thought that it had happened, right? And that was probably a special act, right? So
It was probably a special act, yeah. And then I'm sure that there were private funds that went into the support of some of these parks, and they wanted to protect the private funds.
what I understand, it involved land.
Yeah.
There was some.
Oh, yeah,
transaction,
absolutely,
and then
yeah.
As part of that
somebody
land
gave them
transaction,
land,
they said we stay forever as commissioners, and so, but I think, I'm not sure if we looked at that as to remove some of the boards and commissions.
Well, one of the things that I don't want to cause trouble here, but but I will.
Okay.
But one of the things, everybody understands that you're going to be sending a report to the Board of Alders. And if the majority leader feels that this is something that should be considered, one of the things you may come back with is something that these are allowed at that point to really raise issues. And it's related to this issue about moving things out. The only cautionary advice I can give you on that is, I've said this to a number of communities, and that is when you're going to do, because I also believe you should really reduce the number of departments in a board, in a charter. I think you want to have the charter laying out the functions. You want to have constitutional officials, constitutional officers, people that should be mentioned, but you don't need to have, all of the department heads mentioned in the charter. You want to have the functions mentioned in the charter, and then you want to create it by ordinance. You want to give a mayor the ability to govern and the alders the ability to govern in real time with some kind of constitutional structure. But in both the department side and the board and commission side, I've often recommended that before you create a charter commission, you should bring a management analyst in. You should have a committee. Stanford has, it's amazing. They've got a committee on charter revision committee. And unfortunately, that's why there were about 130 items for the charter commission to address. Because they just accumulate these things over the years. But, you know, you might have a committee of the board of alders look at what do you want to do about the future of our boards and commissions. And then when the charter commission forms, at least as a basis in some analysis where they can come in and really think about this in a very thoughtful and prudent way. You want to meet with the department heads who are related to these departments. Does it make sense? Do you even need a commission for your department? You know, that's another issue as well. So I think that it would be, while you have the ability to do this, we could snap our fingers to take these things out of the charter and move them to the code of ordinances. But if you haven't thought it through, I'd be worried about the impact. I think even if you think it through, there's going to be impact in the end. So that would be my only, I'd be reluctant to try to take that approach unless you see some that are very evidence you'd like to see moved. And that's the privilege of the alders. Ultimately, you have to approve the final report of the charter commissions.
Perhaps, Mr. Chair, we'd be able to form some sort of skeleton, and we would definitely need to meet out of courtesy with the administration, because the mayor is the one that does the appointing, and the board of alders does the confirming, I guess that's the way to say it. But it seems to make sense to at least try to create some kind of skeleton of what departments should not be in the charter, what boards and commissions, just to have a look at it, even if we don't do it, just to have a look at it and say, hey, this is what we're thinking, and then get the opinion of the administration and moving forward with that. I think that's a courteous way to handle it.
Well, absolutely, the administration should definitely be part of it. It's, yeah, from my perspective, that's kind of a given, yeah.
Yeah, and if it doesn't go anywhere, then it doesn't go anywhere. But I think I do agree that we have a lot of lists in our charter that when I first came on the board, I'm reading through it, I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah.
All these are in the bylaws of the city? Are you serious? And so, you know, so it kind of makes sense. And this is, I consider that to be perhaps some of the cleanup that's kind of been staggered through that we've also been commissioned to do as this charter revision committee, is to also tackle some of the cleanup, some of the loose ends that weren't done 10 years ago, because that one was a heavy haul.
It was a big job.
A lot of things have changed in that last charter revision. So
Right.
we're tasked with so many this time, but we can maybe tie together some of the loose ends and, you know, cut the dead ends off of the hair that's growing, right?
Okay. No, I get it. My musician talks about that all the time. But the point is, in the last charter, you'll remember this, Mr. Chairman, we established in both the department sections and the board of commission sections how you create a department, how you create a board of commission. What are the elements that should be in an ordinance when you create a board of commission? What are the elements that should be in an ordinance when you create departments? We did that for a reason. We did that because the commission felt at some point we should move in that direction. There was a much more modest agenda for this commission, so we weren't dealing with it. Still some special act provisions I'd like to tackle at some point. But the truth is, we're set up to do it. It's just a function of getting it done. Yeah, so yeah, I think we should do that. If you need my assistance on that, let me know. Great.
Yes. Yes.
If I may, I'd like to just agree with Commissioner Furlow as well, to look at some of those kind of low-hanging pieces that are still in the charter that need to be reviewed. I think it will take us to another direction. The city's changed. We need to look at it differently, and this is the opportunity to do it or we're waiting 10 years from now to do it. So,
Technically, you do not have to wait 10 years.
in New Haven, you do.
In New Haven, it's mandatory that you have it every 10 years, but you can do it more frequently. I'm not urging that, but I'm just simply saying that that's always a possibility. The next issue, I'm sorry, are there any other questions? The next issue is Board of Alderman number 10. This is a request, I think, from the mayor regarding residency requirements to apply only to those of the appointees approved by the Board of Alders, Fire Chief, Police Chief, 4 coordinators, CAO, Controller, Community Services Administrator, and Economic Development Administrator, and others not approved by the Board of Alders no longer be required to be resident electors. New Haven has a fairly robust residency requirement. And as you can see from this list, throughout the state, many cities do not. Bridgeport does, although it's a broad term of in their charter, but Norwalk has no residency requirement. Danbury has no residency requirement. New Britain has no residency requirement. Hamden has the ability to establish a residency as a requirement if it chooses to do so. Same thing is true in Waterbury. Same thing is true in Hartford. And Hartford actually eliminated, I talked to the Commissioner Schwartz about this today, and I won't tell the total story that I told her today. The Corporation Counsel is a position I do believe should be a resident, should be, because it's a major officer, happens in Corporation Counsel. Of course, I think it's a major office. It has a residency requirement. Most cities throughout the state of Connecticut, not in Hartford any longer. There's a story behind that, which we will not talk about in the public setting, but it has changed. But a lot of communities, depending on the circumstances, make different decisions about residency. I'll give you in Fairfield County, a number of communities are looking at their residency requirements where they have them, because there are individual requirements. The police chief needs to live in town, fire chief may need to live in town. So there are individual offices, but because of the affordability of living in some of those communities, some communities have relaxed their residency requirement because they can't, people who are working for a municipality can't afford to live in Westport or Darien or one of those communities in Canaan in Fairfield County. You have the other issue, a place like Waterbury, which doesn't have a strong middle class neighborhood structure any longer, and they can't find a corporation counsel who actually lives in the city. There are some lawyers who live in the city, but they're not lawyers who do the kind of work that's corporate or business or litigation. There may be slip and fall cases and things like that, and while counsel's offices do a lot of that work, they are having a hard time, and I've recommended over the years that they relax the standard, maybe create a standard for a lawyer who practices law in Waterbury. So there's different ways you have to look at it. You have to look at the circumstances in your community, and I think the mayor, I don't want to speak for the mayor, but I think in light of this proposal that the mayor has made a judgment call based on his ability to attract folks to work in the city to make this request. I'm assuming that is what's behind the request, and that's the context for your review. So I just wanted to let you know where we are in other cities in the state. Be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it would be helpful. I was just looking for the comprehensive list.
Yeah.
Is it here? The comprehensive list of those that.
There's 2 charts, one at the end of the package and one at itself.
Danbury chart?
At the back page of that? There's one chart, then you have the chart as a separate document. Well,
Do my glasses on, I can't see it.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, no, not that one.
It's hard to read, but it says residency in the book.
Oh, that one? Oh, this one?
This one. Yep, it's there. You got it. It's on the, you got it? That's it. You can't, it's hard to read in the blue, but it says residential. Residential.
What is it? It says, which part, Andrew, are you talking about?
You talking about the employees list or you want the town list?
Oh, no, what I was looking for was the list of departments
Mhm.
that the mayor is asking to.
It's at the top of BOA 10. It's at the
That's
top.
in the other package. though.
I included it on that page. It's right at the top. And the administration's here, but I think I included all the officers.
Number 10.
I think I read them to you.
Oh, I'm sorry. It wasn't my understanding that he was asking for all of these to be.
No, he's not.
No, those would remain residents. Everybody else would be out.
Right, so then my question is the ones that he's asking.
Oh, the ones that
to
are
be
out. I don't have that list.
Yeah.
I don't know if they, Short Medicine is here. I do not have that list.
And I had it written down and I have 1,000 notes to search for it and it wasn't popping up, so.
You know, we went back and forth a little bit in.
Yes.
Name and address for the record?
Yeah, Sean Madison, 1279 Quinnipiac Avenue, New Haven. 1279 Quinnipiac Avenue, New Haven. So I'm sorry, your question is who would we prefer to see for
Not have
residents?
residency, I know we talked about it 1,000 times. I wrote it down 1,000 times and today I can't find it. So,
Just before we start, just want to acknowledge Commissioner Nelson. Joined us. Good evening.
Coordinators and department heads other than the public safety, the chief, the police chief and fire chief.
Okay, and just, can we just, say, I know, can we just run through what those departments are? We know them, but those that may not be part of the city structure may not know those. We have traffic and parking.
So the the coordinator, CSA, EDA, CAO, excuse me, bless you. And the department heads running from everything from TTMP,
Traffic, transportation, parking. Yeah.
I mean, if I had the budget in front of me, I could be a lot easier to go through, but I think there are about 40 in total.
And so which appointments would still be subject to residency requirements? Police chief, fire chief,
Correct.
anybody else?
Well, the coordinator, chief administrative officer, they would still be subject to economic development. It's the other department heads that are excluded, I think.
I think, Mr. Chair, makes sense just for the sake of this committee to have a list of the departments that's being recommended that we exclude and not just have a general, we're going to exclude all of them except these.
That's a good question.
And I know, Mr. Madison, we've met
Yeah.
and we've heard this over and over, and so I know basically what they are, but. Yeah, yeah, sure, just express it, just express it. Perhaps it's better, Mr. Madison, if we get it to the committee after.
I think that's fine.
I can do that.
Make a copy of this as well.
Okay.
I can just send you a straight up list if you'd like it.
That'd be great.
Well, that's better than this.
That'd be wonderful.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Any questions for Madison? Commissioner DePaul? No. We're just gonna make sure. Commissioner Nelson? Commissioner San Giorno?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna start.
All right.
All right, so the next item is BOA number, unless there are other questions on the last item. See. Number 6 is updating the charter to include provisions requiring all MOUs to be approved by the alders. As you may recall, the Corporation Council came here last week and said basically what I had drafted was a disclosure ordinance, and it was a disclosure ordinance, but we've kept the disclosure ordinance here as part of it to make sure that we're able to capture these MOUs. But I also recommend modifying the definition of contract. You remember one of the reforms we did, Chairman Smart will recall, 10 years ago, is we added a definition section to the charter.
Mm-hmm.
One of the definitions is contract. If you want all contracts, if you want MOUs included in the approval process, simply modify the definition of the word contract to include MOUs, MOAs, side letters, letters of agreement, all those things. And whatever rules apply to contracts will then apply to MOUs and MOAs. So it's a simple fix. And the language changes in Article 4, Section 1A, 2, and Section 4B2 simply make it clear that what the intent was. We have legal authority as a legislative body. I wanted to make sure to make ordinances, to adopt ordinances. So I added the term legal authority. I don't like the word power, which is used in a lot of charters. I try to attach power and authority. Power is something that a skilled politician knows how to exercise, whether they have authority or not. I like to throw the word authority in wherever you can, especially if it's involving the critical role of adopting ordinances for the members of the Board of Alders. I also modified Section 4B1 to make it clear that making the forms of contracts also includes assurance that all the contracts will be approved and authorized in accordance with law. I think the intent of the MOU request is to make sure that the administration is bringing all legal documents before the board that should be before the Board of Alders. We know it happened 3 years ago, and I think this was an attempt to fix that. So those 3 fixes, it's really the 2 of them, and a slight change in the definition of your authority to adopt ordinances, I think will get you where you want to be. Just having MOUs as part of the term for contracts, so that it's treated that way, and then it goes on the other side of the page. I'm sorry. Maybe you have to make a modification here as well, that all deeds and written contracts approved by the Board of Alders in accordance with this charter and any ordinances adopted thereunder. Again, to make clear that that contracts are subject to the ordinances you adopt. If you adopt an ordinance and they're specific in terms of dollar amounts that you raise or lower, the mayor needs to comply with that. So that's it. Oh, I took out the word agreements next to the word contracts in section 2B4 because agreements are now included in the definition of a contract.
Contract.
Yeah. And I modified a little bit. It's, instead of saying all contracts and agreements with the city are faithfully kept and performed, it was kind of an awkward language that you'd be enforcing contracts with the city. It's contracts in which the city is a party. It sounded like Alder DeCola is signing a contract with the city, and those are the only contracts. So it's really about broadening the language to make sure that it's absolutely clear. So I took a look at all the sections on contracts and tried to come up with clean language to make it work. I think that's-
Chair, Rolo?
Yes, this looks like what we were looking for.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Would you explain again to sign together with the city treasurer? Oh, no, that's already there. To sign together, just to sign together.
Which section are you in?
Article 3, Section 2B3, on the next page. C.
Oh, yeah, this is just language that's in the charter right now. The charter requires the mayor to sign with the city treasurer bonds and other instruments evidencing debt, also contracts approved by the board of alders. And I added the language in accordance with the charter and other ordinances adopted thereunder. It's ancient language. You know, I don't know if there's an absolute need to have the city treasurer. A lot of cities don't have treasurers. They have controllers. They have other finance directors that assume some of the treasurer's responsibilities. We still have a treasurer, I believe. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay. But that's not the language, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yeah, my question is whether we want to keep in the city treasurer. I'm just thinking the long term of the effect that we're having with our bonding by charter. We are mandated to have a controller sign off on bonding. So we run into a little bit of difficulty with an acting controller. If that position should be, I mean, there's a little bit of pushback on the acting controller.
And this is from bond counsel?
Yes, well, not from the bond council, but the controller has to be able, we need to have a controller to sign. And there is the potential of some litigation because we have an active controller in for longer than the 6 months that.
Oh, because of the residency issue.
Right, so is he still authorized to go on that route?
That's an interesting question. Who's bond counsel right now in the city? Is it Robinson Nicole School? Who at Robinson Nicole? Who is it, the lawyer?
It's usually Dave Panico.
Oh, David, okay. Do you want me to call David?
That'd be wonderful.
All right, David's a good friend. What I usually do when we have bond issues, I mean, I know a fair amount about bonds, but I've never been a bond lawyer. I just played one on TV, but how exciting, right? I usually will call somebody like Dave and say, we have this issue. Is there a fix that we can make in the charter that would get us over the hump? Right? Okay.
And then by himself, I guess this himself is who? The city treasurer or the
Mayor.
Okay, so then we're about to change, we'll change that wording himself to mayor?
Yep. That's a gender neutrality that I did not catch. Thank you. Bond issue with control. And if David has raised that issue, is that where it's come up from the bond council? All right, very good. All right, got you. I see. All right. Okay. All right. Enough
Cranky city.
Enough said. Okay. Any other questions on that area? I will talk to Dave Penn. Try to figure that out. I'll talk to the Corporation Council as well, get her thoughts as well. Speaking of the Corporation Council, the next issue, and she told me today that she has some language she was going to recommend, and I told her I'd be happy to take a look at it. The Corporation Council has requested relaxation of the fixed 2-year experience requirement for assistant corporation councils. Rather than a relaxation, but I'll see what the language is that she's going to recommend, I wanted to talk about creating a waiver so that if you have a circumstance and the experience of an applicant proposed by the mayor requiring would be useful and beneficial to the office to have somebody of that experience. I usually use the grandiose concept of some clerk from the Second Circuit who doesn't have the years of experience, but is coming back to New Haven and just wants to do this because he or she grew up in New Haven and wants to give back before they go on to the remainder of their career. The Corporation Council actually came up with a great story. You have retired city officials, whether it's a police official or a fire official who went on to law school after leaving the department And while they may not have the litigation experience, they certainly have a great deal of experience in the departments that they're involved in. And if there's an opportunity, an office, a place in the office of court counsel where there would be some involvement there, as long as there's no conflicts of interest, et cetera, it might not hurt to have somebody with that experience in the office. So there's a range of reasons why you may want to do it, and I would endorse the flexibility. I don't have the language at this moment. She told me she would get me some language. If you're in favor of it, I can write it easily, but I'd be curious to see what the Corporation Counsel is going to come up with in that regard. And those are,
So you'll get back to,
I will get back to you
okay.
at the next meeting. That's it on the items before us. And then we have a number of items that were not placed in there that Commissioner Schwartz and I talked about today, some of which we've already addressed. Many of them most of them do fall within the list of documents I've done already, so I'm not sure I can go through any of these today. But again, keep in mind, what I'm trying to do, Mr. Chair, maybe I'll talk to Commissioner Schwartz about it. I'll try to take my meeting note documents, which kind of go through the top 10, just develop a list. This is the list of things we need to do, including some things that Commissioner Schwartz provided me as well. And so we'll have that list for the next meeting. You'll have all these documents in front of you for the meetings, and then I'll draft after that meeting, and at the meeting thereafter, you will see the actual chart document with the changes, proposed changes, and hopefully vote that document out.
So that's on for the 3rd.
For the 3rd.
Yeah.
The next meeting is where we'll go through the list, make the decisions. I will take the decisions, turn them into the document, and at the meeting thereafter, you'll approve the document, presumably, hopefully.
Al, have we gotten any other comments or anything in?
No, I checked today, we get any
Okay.
testimony.
Okay. Can we send out maybe just a release, letting the public know any comments, kind of winding down? Just get this. I'm just curious, have any of the commissioners gotten any input from neighbors, friends, or anyone, comments about?
I talked to a few people off the record.
Okay, okay.
I want to go on the record.
All right, okay.
But I've been,
Communicate.
talking.
Okay.
I as well, Commissioner. I've spoke to several folks that have, that hopefully we'll get to discuss.
And I just press upon the commissioners to, any information, research, or concerns, either to our secretary, sooner than later, so we can kind of go through as, Steve mentioned, us combing through the list and kind of going down, so once we put things together, we should be in a pretty good shape.
I'm all set, thank you.
Any other questions?
Hey,
Sure, go ahead.
so what's involved with deliberation? I mean, I've never been on a commission before, so.
We're gonna have our counsel walk us through it.
We will walk you through it. What we'll do is we'll have the list, you'll have all of these notes in front of you, and I think we can go sequentially, 1 through 10.
So just to back up a little bit, Steve, I'm sorry. Start again with the 25th. Our process, we're walking right into this,
I'm gonna get my own calendar up here, so talk in an informed way. So the next meeting is on the 25th. We will, at that meeting, walk through sequentially the board of alders orders for the Charter Commission 1 through 10. We have a number of items that are on the meeting notes, documents that I'm passing out that have come from the administration and that have come from the public. And we will go through each of those items, and you will be voting yay or nay to include them or exclude them from the document. To consider them or not consider them, depending on your perspective and the direction you want to take. Some of the items will require a lot of deliberation, others will probably go pretty quickly.
On the
But
25th?
that's 25th. So my recommendation on the 25th, we've had relatively short meetings, the 25th could be a long meeting. Because it's the one meeting we reserved for deliberation, right? We're getting very tight because we have the 15th is the submission date, and we have a public hearing, which is fixed, and there's not a lot of flexibility in the schedule. So we really have to act at those two meetings on the 25th, and then the final meeting of the
So it's
commission
also the third.
will be the 3rd of May.
Okay, 25th and the 3rd.
Yeah, at 6 o'clock. And then the 3rd of May, the intent is to present the actual document. You'll have it before the meeting. I will not spring the document on you after the meeting. I assure you. I'm hoping you might even see it on the 25th. You may see something earlier. With any luck, I'll have it for you for next week, so you have the actual charter document in front of you, with some of the suggested language changes. I'm not, please, I'll apologize up front, not being presumptuous, assuming you're going to make the changes, but I would put language in accordance with the language I've drafted in the backup notes. And if you accept it, then it's easy. If you reject it, we just go back to the language in the current charter. So, or we can change it and do whatever you want to do. My hope is to have it in your hands at that point, so you won't be dependent for the first time. It really depends on the next 10 days, a week, the schedule ahead for me. So it should be able to do that. And then what happens, just to explain the process a little bit more, just to enlarge a bit, is the chair will send the document back to the board of alders on the 15th. We've not sat down with the board at this point, so we don't know what their plan is for timing in terms of turnaround. I know the majority leader.
Sorry, explain the public hearing once you get everything set.
Okay. Then you'll have the public hearing on the public hearing is on the 9th. Yeah, the 9th of the month. And then you will be voting this matter out after the public hearing. Right now, it would be the same night as the public hearing. And there's not a lot of flexibility in our schedule there. The matter that goes to the Board of Alders on the 15th of May, the Board of Alders has up to 60 days to look at the document. They spend the first up to 45 days deliberating. There's something called conferral. Chairman Smart, Chair Smart, and other members of the body will spend a little time at this table with the Board of Alders, explaining the items that we have proposed, and the alders will, ask questions, and then the alders will go off and deliberate. My normal recommendation is that members of the commission should be available for those deliberations. New Haven is a little more formal than other communities. In a lot of communities, people actually participate in the meetings. Once the board goes into its deliberation, you're sitting and watching it on television. Basically, you're not able to deliberate except for side meetings inside of the room. But hopefully, through the informal conferral meetings, there would be plenty of exchange between the leadership of the commission and the leadership of the board. And we have, of course, two alders sitting on this commission who are very able to reflect the views of this commission to the Board of Alders. So the alders have to have a public hearing within 45 days of the receipt of the document. Then they have to act on that within 15 days thereafter. There's up to 15 days to consider what the public had said to them. And then at the end of that period, they come back and give recommendation. Well, they can approve your report without any change. And then it's a final report and your job is over.
We hope.
I think you hope. But we just heard that there might be another look at the issue of boards and commissions and departments. And who knows where that's going to go. But then it comes back to you for up to 30 days. And you have to respond to their recommendations. Usually during that period of time, I strongly recommend that you set up that side of the table, the leadership of the board. You have most of the leadership of the board here, 2/3 of the charter leaders of the board on our commission. And then you have the players sitting at the same table to try to resolve whatever issues there are or respond to the recommendations that the board may have. And then it goes back to the board within 15 days. They have to approve it or disapprove it in whole or in part. They don't have to approve all 10, they can approve 7 of the 10 recommendations, and then they develop their questions for the ballot. I'll be presumably working with them on developing those questions. And then you're done. The moment they approve the report, either in June or early July or in August, depending on whether there's a turnaround, the commission is dissolved and your job is done. That's it.
I just have a quick question in terms of the Park Commission BOA number 7, in terms of reviewing that lifetime membership is what, is there any way that we can get additional information regarding that? I know that you mentioned that there could be some scenarios for how to transition lifetime members. And you mentioned something about when they established this newly formed membership as a result of the East Rock Park Commission. Is there are those 3 positions connected to some monetary intent? I mean, I'm not sure why it's still this way.
Yeah, my assumption is that there was some state-related rationale for it, but I don't know that.
Okay.
Should also point out that did Becky Barbero have some, maybe we should talk to Becky. I did talk to somebody, Jack may have some thoughts on it as well. I did talk to somebody who told me that there's a file cabinet in Westville at the back of the park department that has a lot of the deeds from that period. I'm not sure you want to send me out there to look at all these deeds, whether we want to get that.
Sorry, Bob. No.
Yeah, that's rabbit hole. But I don't know, Judge Keys, do you have, did you have contact with Becky on this or?
I'll call Becky, sure.
All right. Why don't we do that? And we'll try to find that. I did try to do some due diligence on it. I called the New Haven Foundation thinking that they might know. And Will gave you the name of another person. And she was actually very knowledgeable, but no one knew precisely. I talked to some of my lawyers in the estate world.
Right.
I know quite well Brad, and some other people who I thought would have some contact with the park world. And this was not something anybody knew anything about. And the entity that's the appointing entity doesn't exist.
Right. Okay.
And I actually talked to the Corporation Counsel's office as well, just for the record. They and there was just no one had any direct information on this.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think the forthcoming information, Sean, you'll give us a chart sooner than later, sir.
Yeah.
We have it. Oh,
Well, Al gave us.
no, Al gave us this, but do you have anything that
Is
you
this
want
a
to add to
definitive
this,
chart?
Sean?
No, that's the department.
I'm saying, is there anything you want to add to this, or you'll submit to us, or is this good?
Other than there's a few division heads on here which are union members, which you can't do anything with. because-
Okay.
But I can clean it up and send it to you.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
That'd be
Yeah.
perfect,
Yeah.
perfect.
That-
Yes, Thank you. Thank you.
The more precision, the better. Okay, thank you. I'm finished.
All right. Any other questions? Commissioner?
That was my question. You answered it. Thank you.
Perfect. So our next meeting will be on the 25th. Any questions, comments, make sure we get information to Commissioner Schwartz. And Attorney Beckman, let's talk, huddle up and.
I'll be ready. Call me anytime.
Okay. And I'll take a motion to adjourn. Second.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Saturday.
Hi.
Yes. Because I was just like, okay, I don't know what I was thinking.
You know, the board.
I had leadership meeting.